Welcome back to 7th Grade Mustache. On today's episode, we'll be speaking about the mystery schools. Before we get to that, I want to discuss an issue that we've been having with YouTube. YouTube has been shadow banning us. When we first started this show and began putting up episodes, we were getting some decent numbers regarding views. And then when we started to discuss certain topics, the show became more and more difficult to find in a basic search. When you would type in 7th Grade Mustache, it would come up in the first 5 search results. Now you have to type in specific words to pull up our channel. So I'm going to give you a tip to find us. If you're trying to suggest our show to anybody else and you want to help them find the show, type in 7th Grade Mustache and then put the word book after mustache. So 7th Grade Mustache book. What's going to come up is the episode about book burning. From there, they can click on the channel, the little boy with the beard. Click on the channel icon and it'll pull up our most recent episodes. Let's continue with the new episode. So, mystery schools. Mystery schools have always been something that have fascinated me. From an early age, I think about probably the age of about 12 or 13, I began to get into Egyptology and really get deep into it. I mean, spending hours in the library reading old books about ancient Egypt. But it wasn't archaeology that I was interested in. I wanted to know what the motivation was for building these pyramids, for the hieroglyphics. What was the reason? What caused these people to create these magnificent structures that could not be repeated with modern science today? So it was from there that I began to come across different books. Now, see, growing up in Omaha, we had black bookstores. And there were some black bookstores I would go to, and I would find these fascinating books about how black men built the pyramids and how there's higher sciences involved.
We didn't learn that in school. You see, your first introduction to Egypt is like Elizabeth Taylor and Cleopatra, that type shit. So you don't even realize when you're coming up, black or otherwise, that Egypt is even in Africa. You're brainwashed that bad. So you start learning this stuff, and it's almost like a foreign language. Because, again, you know about the Bible, you know about the Egyptians having slaves, but again, in your mind, you never conceived that those people were black in the Bible. So I'm not saying that I was dumb, but I was dumb. I had the same discoveries as you get older. You're like, wait a minute, these was black folks that did this, and then you realize that you start studying it, that they had like a program, like you literally have to have. They talk about knowledge of self, understanding yourself, your motivation. Why would you do this? Who was the Greek philosopher that said these damn Egyptians? Something to the effect, these damn Egyptians have secrets that they won't tell us. They were like, you're not enlightened enough.
So basically, before I visited Europe, I had a friend that went, and he took a tour of all these different castles and cathedrals and stuff, family, and he took photographs. When he came back, he showed me these Merkabas in all the stained glass. Now, Merkaba is essentially the Star of David. Like, it looks like somebody drew a triangle pointing upward and then took another triangle and put it on top of it, but facing down, superimposed over the top of that one. Oh, this is cool. So this 6-pointed star is dope because it was speaking to my spirit in some way. So Merkaba is Hebrew for vehicle. Now, when I saw these photographs of these Merkabas in the stained glass, I realized that so much had been kept from people in America in basic religion, and how the cathedrals of Europe had sacred science and sacred geometry built into them. So by the time I saw this photograph, I'd already been through Egyptology. I already learned about the mystery schools. I already gotten deep into actual practices, meditational practices that would enhance my spirit body and my spiritual evolution. So in junior high school, I picked up a book called Her-Bak. And Her-Bak was written by Isha R.A. Schwaller, this German guy. And he was an archaeologist. And so Her-Bak, he basically broke up this story into 2 books. The first one was published May 1st, 1978. And that book is called Her-Bak, Her-Bak, Egyptian Initiate. The second book is called Her-Bak, The Living Face of Ancient Egypt. And so before this, I'd never grasped the concept of what it was like to live in ancient Egypt before the Arabs got there, before the Romans and the Greeks got there. And I'm like, oh, so this was when all the cool shit was going down. I'm like, all right. So I devoured these books, man. And then after that, I read another book by R.A. Schwaller, and it's called Nature Word. Now, this book was more nuts and bolts about this is how you really think about stuff, or meditate on these things. And basically what it was disseminated Gnosticism. And so I'm like, oh, this is going somewhere. Now, I had been involved in martial arts at that time, and this only accelerated the spiritual portion of martial arts for me. Then I came across the Taoist, Alchemy, meditation, and martial arts system that changed my entire spiritual paradigm. And so then I came across this book around the same time that I picked up Taoism, and it was called Nothing in This Book is True, but It's Exactly the Way Things Are. And I said, that's a strange title for a book. Now, this book is a trip because it has the face of the monuments of Mars on there. It's about Egypt. It's about Horus, the right eye of Horus. It's about the mystery schools of Egypt. More importantly, it's about the Melchizedek order, depending on how you pronounce it. And so this book talked about the war in heaven. And it talked about a civilization that existed in Mars before there were pyramids, and Atlantis on Earth. Blew me away, these concepts. Now, this stuff is hard to nail down, and you can't prove it. There's no way to carbon date any of these things these people are talking about. But it's fascinating nonetheless. So I'm reading these books and just devouring this stuff, right?
What's fascinating is how much information is out there that it's just so much information that you don't even know where to find it. So when you trip over it, you just have to you just eat it.
But it's in plain sight, which is crazy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yes, but that's the whole thing is that you can go to you can walk in a library. One of my first job was at a library. You know this, and that's how I found out certain things. The first book I remember about Egyptology, we were back at Fontenelle, back at grade school. They had like this watered down Book of the Dead that was in our library. And that's the first thing I read about Egypt. And again, here's the crazy part. It shows all these Egyptian symbols, all these deities, but not one black person in the book. In fact, it was kind of like, almost like it was illustrated from a kid's point of view, but not like kiddie, but you know what I'm saying? It was literally had no black people in it.
Right.
Then, I read, like look, you can read better than me. I've always had issues reading. So I read a couple books later on, and then I get to become, like I said, literally my job was page at the library. I was shelving books, and you would find books, and the titles, like you said, the titles would blow your mind, and you thumb through these books and read. And one of them was a book on Islam, but it wasn't the Islam that we know over here in America. This was literally a book of spells of Islam. Like the left eye of a female wolf will ward off demons. That's the kind of shit that was in this book. And so I'm sitting here putting the book. So like you said, it's in plain sight, but it's not in plain sight. It's not in your regular class. When you go to class, you're learning math. You learn some history. You learn about some presidents. You learn about we were slaves and the Indians got fucked over. You learn that little shit, but you don't learn what could actually advance you in the world, that what could actually advance you in spirituality. Even when you go to church, you learn some shit. But so then you find out about Freemasonry. Then you find out like damn near every preacher and every cop is a Mason. What the fuck is that about? And then you get curious, and then you find like, so basically like everybody has levels, and you got to learn this to get to that level. You got to learn that to get to this level. And there's a lot of shit out there that we don't know. And so you find out that shit. That's how they basically got the spirituality shit and this history shit out there, but they won't give it to you unless you initiate it. That's why you always hear the initiates or the initiate schools or the mystery schools. So you got to go through some kind of weird ceremony, cross the burning sands or whatever it is, and then they'll give you a little tidbit of information that. So, but what we're learning is when you start doing the research is that there's whole societies out there with technology that technology is lost, but spirituality's lost, and a lot of this other stuff is lost. But there's somebody who knows a little. All these different groups have a little bit.
Okay. Okay. I'm in the middle of a story, motherfucker. Like, settle down. So then I'm reading these books on Egyptology, and this is still in junior high school. And so the Franklin Mint would have these goofy little commercials, and they would have,
Yep.
these Egyptian artifacts. So I ordered this one, and it was a bust, the head of Tutankhamun, and I
Oh
had
shit.
a waterbed, and I put it, and my waterbed had a mirror on there, and I put it on my waterbed at the, like, where my head is, like, right there inside the little mirror area, and I just sit it right there, like, just on some just pharaoh type shit.
Like
right?
Time Life books shit. You there?
It was crazy, man, because my mother would come into my room, to like put like laundry and stuff in there while I'm sleeping, and she said I'd be laying there and there'd be this white light shining out of my third eye, and I'm like, oh, okay.
Look, we all know your mom can see auras, so that
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's some real shit.
Right.
He's not making that up. He's not saying that for the story. That's some shit.
And so then, this journey continues, and I keep coming across all these books and all these things. And, I was learning about Islam, and, I was reading the books that they had, and they sold in the Final Call, all that stuff, which it was cool. It was cool for a teenager, but I knew like what I was looking for, the meat wasn't there. And it was funny because like years later, when I got to Atlanta, Malachi York had a cult in Atlanta, this guy. And what he would do is he would take these things from the same books that I was reading. He would cherry pick certain things and make these little like 20-page pamphlets. And so he would have these impressionable young brothers go around on the streets and on the train in Atlanta selling incense and these books, and they'll call it the right knowledge. And like these dudes would walk up to me like, brother, you got the right knowledge. I'm like, bro, you got part of the knowledge. And we would get into these fucking discussions. I'm like, first of all, half the shit that you talking about, you need to go and read the books and get all of the information. Stop following this fucking guy because he's a pedophile. But whatever, that's another story. We covered that in Black People and Cults. Go and listen to that fucking episode. So listen.
Yahweh ben Yahweh. Go ahead.
So now I'm learning a lot more deep into Taoist alchemical meditation, what they call Chinese yoga. That's going on, and I'm on this fast track spiritually, learning all this stuff. I'm learning Iron Shirt Qigong, which is a martial art and a meditation at the same time. So I'm doing this, and I'm learning more rapidly. But like I'm still coming across these books in the bookstore that tease you. They don't give you the meat. They're just giving you grizzle and a lot of fat. So I'm reading these books and I'm like, this is garbage. And then I would come across something every now and then that would give me something that's really powerful. Now that's what I was getting from the Chinese yoga, Taoist alchemy. That stuff was no fluff at all. Now this is around the time when all of this whole life stuff and this like this new age stuff is blowing the fuck up. No, it's past Dianetics. It's beyond that.
But you remember the commercials though.
This is the 90s though. This is the 90s though.
Oh, yeah.
And
right,
so,
right.
And this is when like this, the Whole Life Expo and like, Whole Foods is blowing up. Everybody's like, doing all this natural stuff and like, a lot of bitches doing yoga and shit. And this is before yoga pants. And so,
yeah.
And so,
Lululemon.
Yeah, before that.
Before that.
All this is blowing up and there's like this waves like sweeping. And this is like, late 90s, man, you know what I'm saying? And so like the world is changing, but like there's this sense of like, anything is possible because there's no major wars going on. And so the Illuminati is suppressing information, but the suppression of people is only coming from the politicians in the form of Joe Biden and the Clintons and their crime bill. So there's this.
I was about to say this is after the wall came down. This is after the Cold War.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's a whole different vibe.
There's a different vibe altogether. So it's like this freedom vibe, you know what I'm saying? But at the same time, the New World Order is slowly starting to put their shadow over the top of the world because I'm seeing, cameras on the interstates, you know what I'm saying? I'm seeing like, more and more cameras and, retinal scanners and all these things. I start reading like this magazine called Mondo 2000. Mondo 2000, for those that know, was crazy as fuck because it talked deeply about biotechnology with the people who were working at these biotech. Basically, it was a magazine out of Silicon Valley in California, and it was like rave culture. It was like biotech. It was cutting edge. It was about gene splicing and like gene editing back then. So it was way before its time. And so I'm pulling all this information from like all these different places. And then I come across this book called Wisdom of the Mystic Masters. This book was given to me by a friend that I grew up with. His father had a TV show, okay? And it was an Afrocentric TV show, but progressive. And he had an older brother. His older brother, you know, he kind of went off the deep end a little bit. But before he did, he blessed me with his book. He was like, dude, you need to read this.
Check it out.
He went past everybody else that was at the house that day. And he was like, you need to read this. And I'm like, got it. Message received, got it. So I started reading this book. What this book is, it is practices from the Rosicrucian order. Now, these practices basically unlock latent abilities that you have within your DNA and in your spirit body. Deep shit, dude. Deep
Look,
shit.
I just sent you an article about that for the CIA. The CIA actually has some kind of practices where they said it strengthens and opens up the mind, blah, 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 whatever.
Yes.
I sent that shit to you because I knew you were going to talk about this.
Okay. So this book, Wisdom of the Mystic Masters, written by Joseph J. Weed, love that, February 1st, 1971. Okay. I didn't get this until late 90s. But this book is mega powerful because, again, it gives you actual practices on how to use your abilities and sharpen them. I wasn't getting this from the black bookstore. I wasn't getting this from the Moors. I wasn't getting this from nobody. This organization brought this about, but I was like, okay. I started digging into who they are. Now, there's a schism because there was a true Rosicrucian order in the Middle Ages.
Yeah,
but
in Europe.
The modern iteration appears to be started by some guy that's like a scam artist. So he took some of that and went off on a tangent. So, take that with a grain of salt. Like, this is useful information, but there's, some of it muddies the waters. Now, does it work? Absolutely. Because I did it consecutively, months and months and months at a time. And so with each lunar cycle, I would notice an improvement in my cognitive abilities. So this is not horse shit, ladies and gentlemen. It's real shit. It's from the mystery school. So,
But hold on, for the record, you were into that shit before. Your mom knew about the moon cycles. Remember, you were the one who told me about Reagan. If you pay attention, Reagan only does a speech on certain days.
Right.
You broke that shit down light years before everybody else, and you explained this shit like, look, you're like, hey, duct tape. The moon has a bigger, what's the word you use? Bigger influence on your physical and mental well-being than you realize, and we don't broke that shit down years ago. So when he's telling you this, he's not blowing smoke up your ass. You were practicing
this is shit I live, man.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. This is not some kind of wild story. He's telling you about actual events. That's why I'm like, yeah, you had broke that. I'm like, yeah, whatever, dude. Then I read articles years later where I'm like, hey, man, Roscoe was on something with this shit.
So check this out. So, and then I came across this book by R.A. Schwaller, Nature Word, which I had already edified and reinforced some of these practices and like this knowledge I'd come across as a young boy. And so, some of these things are old and they're not esoteric. Like, they're things that fishermen pick up.
Yes.
They notice like when are the fish bite, depending on a certain point in the lunar cycle. And it's when all the creatures are out, and it's when everybody's out getting food and they're mating. That's when the best time to go and fish. It also relates to the tide. So these movements, these vibrations, this resonance, this becoming simpatico with the world around you, more in harmony with that, gives you useful wisdom. Okay?
Look, the moon affects tides, and you're 80% water. It's going to affect you. That's what you had told me years ago. And I'm like, like I said, forgive me. At the time, I thought it was horseshit. Then later on, I realized, okay, that makes perfect sense. The moon affects this, and you're mostly water. It's going to affect you in some kind of way. And the other thing that you did better than most people is you tie knowledge together. You don't compartmentalize knowledge. Like, when you got some shit, you realize, okay, how does this tie into this?
Let's cross-reference this to see if this is some bullshit or not.
Exactly.
And so that's what we do. See, listen, for those of you like don't understand the inside baseball of this show, me and Duct Tape have been chopping it up like this for decades. Okay?
40 years.
And so when we come across information, we go into the dojo and we spar. And we're like, all right, does this technique work? Let's try it out. You know what I'm saying? Come at me. What you got? You know what I mean? And we vet this shit. We vet this shit to see if it has legs, if it's real.
One of the incidents in college, I told you this story. I had a professor who's like, hey, he fucked my name up all the time, but he said, you got so much. You said you're from Omaha, Nebraska. You have so much in common with Malcolm X. You got to understand that you're not like anybody else in this class. This was a philosophy professor. And that's when he started telling me about self-realizing activities, where he's like, look, the first thing you do in the morning when you wake up, when you gain your consciousness, when you conscious, you immediately, thank God. And the first time you do that shit, your mind blows up like a painting full of colors, like all kinds of shit hits you. Like you understand some shit that you've been studying. And so when you start doing that kind of stuff and you realize that spirituality ain't religion, or when you realize that that you can actually, I don't want to say manufacture a high, because I don't want to cheapen this, but like you literally can achieve something without drugs, but simply by doing an activity. And that's how Roscoe is. He's doing these activities to get higher and higher. And it's not about high as in just simply achieving. It's like, oh, damn, my third eye is wider and wider and I can see stuff. And you
it's
recognize
training,
stuff.
Dude. It's training. Like, we grew up with Kung Fu theater. And so Sundays, you know what I'm saying? Sunday
USA
channel. You know what I'm saying? Right around noon, 11:30, you get to the crib because this cable station out of New Jersey is putting on these Kung Fu movies and shit. And so, we're in Omaha, and like that's the cool thing about cable back in the day. We were watching shows from New York, New Jersey, Chicago, California. We were getting shit from all over. So we weren't these motherfuckers like out here in the sticks like that weren't getting culture. No. That's why like when people can't figure out where I'm from or where Duct Tape is from based off of how we talk, not because we don't have a dialect, it's because what we're saying and we're so fucking sharp with shit. I'm like, dude, it's the way we came up. Anyway, I digress. Getting back to Kung Fu theater for a second is because, all right, cool, man. They're training. You see Shaolin and Taoist training, Wu-Tang training in these Kung Fu movies and shit. And I'm like, oh, so there's sacrifice and there's hard work. And if you push yourself, you reach a high level. You get the glow. Last Dragon. Anyway.
Last Dragon. Yeah, I was about to go there. No, seriously, I was about to go there. You already said it.
So
that's why I hate talking to you. Get up my head. Get up my head.
So, you know what I'm saying? Like, all right. And then, we start, training and shit, with this dude in our neighborhood and shit. You know what I'm saying? And we start getting our own training in. But see, that ethos stays with the both of us our entire lives.
That's why black folks love that shit. So the reason we love Kung Fu theater is because deep down, sometimes we can be lazy, but we know if we apply ourselves and have discipline.
So all you got to do is work hard and be dedicated? Yes.
Period.
Yes.
You can win.
So you can win. Bingo. So, we're training and we're learning all this stuff. Now see, Duct Tape, he still trains, he still rolls. I still train. This stuff that was put in us as a child, excuse me, let me back this up. These things that we accepted and learned as truths and as universal truth and wisdom are still with us today. And it's part of the makeup of our psyche and our thought process. So we saw that you could just train hard and be dedicated and you will improve. And I did. And I was applying that to all this information that I deemed useful and necessary. Okay? So then in this book, Nothing in This Book is True by Bob Frizzell, he's speaking about the Melchizedek order. And I'm like, I heard that somewhere. Where the fuck have I heard that? And you know what I'm saying? Like as a young black kid, man, like unless you go into Bible school, you know about the Bible, you read some of it, but you ain't like a scholar, you know what I'm saying, by the time you're 12 or 14 years old, unless you're like a fucking nerd, but whatever. So the Melchizedek order. So it refers to an ancient priesthood ritual that was recorded in Genesis 14:18, where Melchizedek offered a sacrifice of bread and wine. This was replicated at the Last Supper when Jesus broke and shared bread with his disciples. Melchizedek is described in Genesis as the king of Salem, translating to the king of peace. This is why the biblical appearance of Melchizedek in Genesis 14:18 through 14:20 occurred many decades before Levi, Abraham's great-grandson, was born, and more than 300 years prior to Israel receiving law in Exodus 20. The existence of this order prior to the giving of the law meant that it would not be bound by the rules regarding the priesthood. Now that's powerful right there, because what you're getting here is the Jedi order. These are the Jedis. Jedis are real. Listen to me. The teachings of the Melchizedek order are the teachings of the Jedi. You think I'm bullshitting? Go fucking do it. Go read it. Go dig it up and go practice it and tell me what happens to you in 5 years.
See, the whole thing is that nobody, it's kind of crazy. Like, so when these Europeans come over, they say they colonize, take over an area, whatever you want to call it. So before they got to India, people were levitating in India. Before they got to India, people were doing all kinds of crazy stuff, all kinds of meditation, ability, hovering, whatever it was. But all of a sudden, then they hit you with this watered down version of Christianity. They take over, they rape your women, they take your land and shit, and you're not connected to the land anymore. All of a sudden, you don't have. It's not just spirituality you're losing. You're losing actual power. And this is the kind of stuff that happens when you get watered down, I guess you could say. And that's what we're talking about. They literally have this knowledge that's hidden in plain sight. You got to find it. You start reading it, and you get enlightened to like, okay, so what technology was hidden from us? You know, literally like nobody had. All you got is Tesla. I mean, you got Nikola Tesla that was doing shit, then nobody else. Or you got that dude down there in Florida. Remember, he built some structures and shit. They said he had a little box that had vibrations and sound that he said, I figured out the secret of the pyramids. And ain't nobody else did that shit since.
The guy that you're referring to, his name is Edward Leeds Scullin, and he built the Coral Castle. This guy, his story is a trip because he travels to America to follow this woman he was in love with, right? They're from his village. Her family moved over here. He came over looking for her when he got the money to pay for the boat trip. He lands in Canada, and he, his heart's broken, you know what I'm saying, for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. And then from Canada, he walks from Canada to Florida.
It's crazy.
This guy walks all the way down to Florida, and when he gets to Florida, he's like, I need a home. He uses the materials around him. There were no log trees, but there was a lot of coral laying around. So this dude, which in a way is unknown to most people, uses electromagnetic energy and levitates these rocks into place and makes this home out of coral. It's still standing today, and you can go. It's his homestead, Florida. You can go see it.
He said that he figured out the secrets of the Egyptians, is what he said. And people swear that he had some box that he would use to move the stuff around, but nobody knows what was in that box. Nobody understands what was going on, whether it was sound, whether it was electromagnetic, whatever it was. Now, when you talk about these secret schools, you know, the Masons love to talk about King Solomon. That's their OG. Remember, they tell you that the Temple of Solomon wasn't built. He built the Temple of Solomon, but not by hand. Supposedly, he used demons or fallen ones to move this shit around. Again, that's their beliefs. I ain't knocking it. I'm just trying to tell you that a lot of this shit is achievable now, and you'd be surprised what's out there. This guy built this whole thing by himself. He didn't have any help, and everybody who's around said he did not have help.
So the Melchizedek order is also in Psalms 110:4, and Hebrews 7:17. So if you want to go look up the Melchizedek order, they're in Psalms, they're in Hebrews, and they're also in they're also in Genesis 14:18. So what this shows you is that there is a group, there is a brotherhood, there is an organization of people that are about preserving life and teaching that in a way to better people and make a better life in this world that has fallen angels, and it has the offspring of fallen angels. This is around, this is before, Mount Athens, where the fallen angels became known as Zeus and all the other fallen angels that were the gods, quote unquote, of ancient Greece. So right here at this point in time, there's a lot going on. And so this point in time represents, a overlap of civilizations. You had Atlantis, which had just fallen, and then that was part of the Great Flood. And then you have the creation of Egypt, and then Mesopotamia. And so all this is going on, all this is overlapping, and some things are getting lost. So you have men and women that want to preserve this information that existed before the flood. Okay? And so, well, how do you do that? You basically, some people hide it in temples, and some people reveal this in scrolls. It's in libraries. There was a great deal of it probably in the Library of Alexandria that was burnt down.
We had an episode about book burning about 6 episodes ago, where we talked about how much information was lost from North American, from the Library of Alexandria, or how much stuff the Catholic Church is keeping from us, because they're the ones who said nothing existed before 6,000 years. There's a reason for that.
Hey, don't look over there. Don't pay attention to that. That's a fake out. That is a fucking fake out. That's the church attempting to control information once again, and the Vatican has always been doing that. But listen, let's talk about ancient Sumeria for a second, because it began at the peak of its development because of this sudden infusion of knowledge. And this Aryan race, which is said to be originally from Mars, expanded out from the Caucasus Mountains in the Near East down into Sumer and Egypt and the Indus Valley, where then conventional history agrees highly advanced societies spontaneously emerged. However, within this white race was a genetic stream that can be called reptile Aryan or reptile human. Whenever you see the term Aryan, it's to refer to the white race. So this race was in a mountainous area, not the Caucasus, not the Caucasus Mountains, but they were closer to the Himalayas. They are closer to the Himalayan areas, which is why Nazis had such a fascination with the Dalai Lama before and after around World War II. So
Hitler was big into the Eastern philosophy because that's where the swastika came from. He didn't create it.
Right.
He found it in their teachings already and adopted it from them.
Okay, but these were crossbred bloodlines created from genetic manipulation by the Anunnaki. The major center for these reptile Aryan bloodlines in the ancient world after the floods receded was Babylon in the south of the Sumer region alongside the river Euphrates. But a closer look at the evidence appears to date the foundation of Babylon far earlier than previously believed. And so you would only have to look at the Sumerian kings list. See, this is the cool thing about going into other cultures and looking at their history. There is a reason why in the invasion of Iraq, they stole tremendous amounts of artifacts and scrolls.
He's getting deep, y'all. Look, the Sumerian kings list, remember for years they said they could never find Nimrod's name? You remember that?
Yep.
Well, then, oh boy, he's a drummer. I can't remember. He's a drummer from one of these old rock groups. He's actually an archaeologist. And he found his name on there because you got to remember they would leave the vowels out. So no. Oh, no. I don't want to lie to you. It's one of these old rock groups from England. The drummer is like some kind of super archaeologist, and people just don't realize that's what he's into. And so he finds Nimrod's name on the king's list. And it's because the reason they couldn't find it is because, in Hebrew, they used to leave out the vowels. And so they find his name with only part. Long story short, you realize that all this shit is a cross-reference. Just like my brother just told you, like you can't learn this whole biblical shit and then learn some shit over here in Sumer and learn this shit over here at Babylon, and then like it all goes together. And so he broke some real deep shit down. But yes, they find Nimrod's name, and Nimrod is supposed to be with the first king and the first hunter and all that bullshit. I shouldn't say bullshit. All that shit from the Bible. So some of that shit was proven.
Yep. Yep. So here you have this Babylonian Brotherhood. And this Babylonian Brotherhood, which still controls a great majority of the world today, is an expression of the Babylonian Brotherhood of reptile Aryan priests and royalty, which came together after the flood. And in this post-flood area, around 7,000 years ago, the foundation beliefs, the manipulated beliefs of today's world religions were established to control and rule the people.
Hey, what's your is it David Icke?
David Icke.
Icke, yes.
Whenever that guy is talking about reptilians, they attempt to silence him so fast.
You already knew where, like, either he gets, and then, but he doesn't just talk the shit. I saw one of his documentaries in Africa where he finds this African people who talk about reptilians going back generations. Like, hey, yeah, this guy's ancestor was
Zulu. You're talking about Zulu. The guy is Credo Mutwa. If you want to look him up, he's a Zulu shaman. His name is Credo, Credo Mutwa, Mutwa.
Mutwa, yep. And he look. If I get it, you might not believe this reptilian shit. You might think this is a joke. You might think this is some shit for the History Channel late at night. Think whatever you want. But there's a reason that flood happened. There's a reason that some of this shit is, I don't even know how to describe it. It's much more science reality than science fiction. You dig? It's not. Okay. Yeah.
So, all right. On a lot of Freemason symbols, you'll see a two-headed eagle. All right, or an eagle with two heads, one looking left, one looking right, east and west. This is Babylonian. That's Babylonian. Ooh. That is a symbol of Nimrod in the role of Enos. Enos was a deity with two faces, which was also Nimrod. And it would also suggest the eagle is symbolic of the winged Draco. Dragon.
That's a dragon that went from here and there, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The one that Saint Michael fought.
Dig this, though. Enos, Nimrod, was said to hold the keys to the doors of heaven, and he was the sole intermediary between God and humanity. Therefore, any belief not supported by him was false and should be condemned. That's shadow banning right there. Shadow banning 101.
Look, the scariest shit is when they talk about these angels that having keys and these different angels buried over there, and is it Lebanon or Iran? Like, literally, there's supposed to be some angel buried under the ground and shit. And these motherfuckers be going to these caves and hearing voices and shit. And these are military motherfuckers who freak out who are over in Afghanistan, in the Middle East, hearing shit and seeing shit. We've already told you the story about the giants. Whether you believe that or not, that's up to you. But again, I wasn't there. We're just going by what somebody else said. But there are legitimate soldiers that come back.
Nimrod built an amazing structure called Baalbek in Lebanon, and with 3 stones weighing 800 tons each. It was said that he ruled the region that is now Lebanon. And according to Genesis, the first centers of Nimrod's kingdom were Babylon, Akkad, and others in the land of Shinar or Sumer. So here you have this suppression and control by this guy who's considered a tyrant. And so this control continues to the day. All right, so it's a tool that was used by the Babylonian priesthood to impose their will on the population, and exactly the same scam that's been played by their successors, the Christian priests, the rabbis, and the priesthood of Islam, Hinduism, and all the rest.
Like people don't understand, like those Levitical monks and all that shit, they were about power. They were about oppressing people and doing crazy shit. And like, okay, your prayers to go to me, then go to God. That's what they were doing.
Okay.
They run the scam for years.
So the Roman Catholic title of cardinal comes from the word cardo, which means hinge, and relates to Nimrod's role as guardian at the door to heaven.
Oh, wow.
The Babylonian priests even established a governing body they called the Grand Council of Pontiffs, a name later transferred to the Church of Rome. The Babylonian high priest, which instructed the inner circle initiates, was known as Peter, meaning the great interpreter. The feast of the day of Christian St. Peter was traditionally celebrated on the day the sun entered the astrological house of Aquarius. the very day Enos, Nimrod, and Janus, Two Faces, were honored. The Babylonian religion, like all lookalikes, were considered to follow at least two levels. The masses were manipulated into believing superstitions, into taking symbolic stories literally, while the chosen initiates were given the real knowledge
stories, yes,
on penalty of death if they ever revealed it. In this way, the truth about life, human potential, history, and the reptilian control were lost to the population and kept only for the few.
There's a reason that so many of these different religions don't celebrate holidays. And people are like, I don't celebrate. That's because most of these holidays have been corrupted, and you're actually worshiping somebody. You don't realize that you're accidentally or on purposely worshiping somebody else. Even one of the things that we learn in church is like they literally have you worshiping on the wrong day. Saturday is the Sabbath, not Sunday. And literally, you start learning like, okay, so why do people worship on this day? There's a reason for that. Like if you worship the wrong day, you're actually worshiping the wrong person or the wrong deity or the wrong, whatever. And that's why these holidays are so corrupt. Or is corrupt the right word? Fucked up. How's that?
Human sacrifice was fundamental to the religion of Babylon. And wherever the Babylonian Brotherhood and their reptilian bloodlines traveled, human sacrifice was always part of their MO, because the reptilians demanded these rituals. The malevolent ones seemed to be addicted to blood, and this has been passed on to their crossbreeds as evidence you can just find in so many different places. Babylonian priesthoods were required to eat some of their sacrificial offerings. And so for the word priest, cannibal became the term for eating human flesh, cannibal.
Ball.
Moloch. Moloch is the name of the flying lizard. By another name, Nimrod Tammuz. Tam means to perfect. Moon means to burn. Tammuz, perfect burn. It's like somebody's rolling a blunt. Anyway, so you can see the symbolism of Tammuz Moloch. Therefore, in the rituals of burning children alive in honor of this deity, which you also see at the cremation of Care in Bohemian Grove. This is all Babylonian Saturn worship, dude. That's what you're seeing here. Yeah, man. It just goes on and on and on. And under pain of death for speaking out about it, that's something you see in Masonry. When a Mason has squealed and talked too much, they put gravel in his pockets and they hang him by his neck. And he's considered a rough ashlar.
Look, I remember when I was a kid, I told you this story. My uncle had passed years before this, but my uncle was a York Rite Mason. And I remember my Aunt Essie was like, my Aunt Essie was the one I would talk about. She's 104 when she died. She said, yeah, they mailed his ass off. I said, man, she don't cuss. She said they mailed him off. I said, what do you mean they mailed him off? Whatever this guy did to like shun the lodge or piss the lodge off, they put him in a coffin, a casket, nailed it shut, and mailed him to a different address and told him he wasn't allowed there anymore. That's how they got it. They didn't kill him, but they said you weren't allowed here, and they mailed him away. And everybody talked about it like, oh, it was no big deal. Like nobody was freaked out about this. In my 8-year-old mind, I'm like, you mailed somebody away? Like, yep. They put him in a casket, nailed it shut, and mailed him to a different address. He was not allowed.
While he was alive.
Yeah. Oh no, he was not dead. Yeah, he was not. So I'm like, what the hell? And I'm thinking like, how do you go to the bathroom? Because I'm a kid. I'm stupid. Please forgive me. How do you go to the bathroom?
Oh, he shit himself.
Yeah, no, they gave him water. They gave him like 2 jugs of water, enough, and they mailed his ass. So yeah, so that tells you what kind of power, or I don't know if power is the right word, but he accepted that punishment. How about that? He didn't come back for him. If you did something like that to me, I'm like, I'm gonna whoop your ass. No, he did not. He accepted his punishment. That's what I mean. This is some biblical, this is some ancient shit. And another thing that I remember talking about when we were in college, one of these dudes, his dad was like a captain in the military, and he said it to me first, but I remember reading it, something vaguely like that in Behold a Pale Horse. He's like, every other, once you get over that 32nd, 33rd degree, they said they kind of split the difference. Half of them worship God, other half worship the devil. And he was like, basically what his dad says, like, well, whoever wins, we'll have a seat at the table, is basically what they were saying.
Okay, so going back to what I was saying about Bohemian Grove, the Beltane ritual performed in Britain by the Druids on May the 1st, May Day, involved burning of children in the belly of a huge wicker effigy of a man, burning the cremation of care. This was
Ooh.
inherited from the Babylonians when the Brotherhood expanded across Europe. Indeed, it may well be the reptilians had once based themselves in what is now the UK and Ireland before they moved their main focus to the Near East and Africa. The Feast of Tammuz on June 23rd celebrated his ascension. Excuse me, we're talking about Nimrod. Nimrod's ascension from the underworld, where he was resurrected. Tammuz, also known as Oannes, the fish god. Oannes is a version of the name John. John. For this reason, John has been used as a symbol as Tammuz Nimrod in symbolic characters like John the Baptist. June 23rd, the Feast of Tammuz became the Christian day called St. John's Eve. Put it together. John, symbol for Tammuz, risen from the dead, from the underworld, resurrected. 23rd, 2-3 is a word in Chinese I Ching, means break apart. So June 23rd, he breaks apart, he's resurrected, and it's called the Christian day of St. John's Eve, the Feast of Tammuz. They're hiding pagan holidays within Christian holidays, and it was the Council of Nicaea and Constantine that did that. So
that okayed it, basically. Oh my God, yeah, that's some deep shit. I remember Arius was actually a priest that was okay. There's more than one Arian out there, but there was a sect of priests that were fighting, that they were trying to kill the motherfuckers because they didn't agree with
this Arian though, it's older than that though. It's older than the character in the Bible.
Yeah. This is a different Arian. I get that. Yeah,
this is pre-biblical like history that we're talking about.
See, the Council of Nicaea is the one who put the Bible together. So literally, this is pre-biblical. This is before the Bible existed as we know it, and we get where these stories came from. The stories are before the Bible, but this is before these motherfuckers sat down and put the motherfucker together and decided what to leave out and shit.
Yep. Okay, so when you look at the different mystery schools, there's the Babylonian, there's the Egyptian one, which always fascinated me, but I could never get any real practical kata, any forms, any styles to practice from it, because nobody fucking knew anything. It was all like withheld and like kept away from people and shit. And so there was the Egyptians, and then after them there was the Greeks, and the Greeks had the Elysian. This was a hard one to pronounce, but it's Elysian, as in the Elysian Fields, or Elysium, like the movie. Elysian Fields. And so the Elysium mysteries are based on a different group of deities, but all these deities come from Mount Olympus, or Mount Athens, Mount Olympus with Zeus. And so it is the Elysian mysteries of the Greeks that go back to the 5th century BC. And those are the most popular, influential of the cults, because the rites took place in the city of Eleusis, a small community about 14 miles west of Athens. But it was the ruler of Athens, together with a select committee, who was in charge of managing the annual event. Although the Dionysian and Orphic rites could be celebrated any time, the Eleusinian rites were held at a fixed time in early fall, after the seeds had been entrusted to the Eleusinian drama, reenacted the myth of rape, abduction, and marriage of Kore, who was Persephone, by Hades, the god of the underworld, and her separation from her mother, Demeter, the goddess of grain and vegetation. So Demeter refuses to follow the earth to bear fruit, and brings about a time of blight and starvation that threatens to extinguish both humans and the gods. Zeus calls Persephone from Hades. Filled with joy at the reunion with her daughter, Demeter once again follows the earth to bear fruit. Persephone, however, will divide the days of each year between her husband, Hades, in the underworld, and her mother ensuring a bountiful harvest. So this is all allegory, right?
Supposedly.
But essentially, the rites imitated the agricultural cycles of planting seed, nurturing its growth, harvesting the grain, which on the symbolical level represented the birth of the soul, its journey through life, and its death. As the seeds of the harvest is planted again and the agricultural cycle is perpetuated, so is the soul harvested by the gods to be resurrected. Membership in the mystery of Elysian was undertaken to ensure initiates a happy immortality. So then you have Dionysus and the Dionysian mysteries. Next to the Elysian ones are almost as important as the Elysian ones. So they're very popular, and they center around Dionysus, who is Bacchus. Where do you hear that? You hear Bacchus in Mardi Gras, debauchery, okay? A god of life, vegetation, and the wine, grapes, because all things growing in green must one day decay and die, was also the divinity of the underworld. That's New Orleans, baby.
Debauchery.
Yes. Those initiates who entered into a communion with Dionysus drank large amounts of wine and celebrated with feasts that encouraged them to dress themselves in leaves and flowers, even to take the character of the god himself in an attempt to achieve his power. Once the god has entered into a union with the initiates, they would experience a spiritual rebirth. This divine union with Dionysus marked the beginning of new life for the initiates, who after that regard themselves as superior beings. And since Dionysus was the lord of death, as well as the lord of life, the initiates believed that their union with him would continue even after death, and that immortality was now within their grasp.
Hey, what was the one? There's a couple of eternal life cults, but they were all based on what the Gilgamesh. I can't think of it.
Okay, so the one that you're referring to, that's Mesopotamian. Okay?
Yeah, I can't think of it. But long story short, basically, this king decides that, hey, I'm gonna find the gods. I'm gonna find eternal life. And basically, he does all this searching and finds out that it's not possible.
It's a king's quest for immortality.
Yeah,
but see, he's refused, and the gods kept immortality for themselves. So from clay, the gods shaped humankind and breathed life into their nostrils of life.
Yes, but then they pull the wind out your nostrils at some point, and so it's some eloquent
is before
shit.
The Bible's even written.
But so this motherfucker, so the idea of eternal life, it's an ancient concept, and that literally these people were searching for it. And so another thing that makes it kind of crazy, that when they talk about these guys, Zeus, Poseidon, brother, and all this shit. Do you know that, like, when you do the research of Poseidon, they know where his birthplace was. So that's when you get all confused. Like, is this motherfucker a real dude? Like, this Poseidon's birthplace, and you're like, is this a real dude or is this just allegory? You don't know, because so much of this shit is mixed together, cross section or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, these initiate cults, these whatever you want to call them, have been doing this for years.
Duct tape. He was real. You know why? Because all these deities that I'm describing, they were fallen angels, or they're demigods, the children of human mothers and fallen angel fathers. And
Hercules, whatever you want to call them.
All these cats were fallen angels, man. So yeah, they were real, dude. That's the crazy part about it. Is like, I just read to you here from this book about how the Babylonian Brotherhood kept the true story for themselves and created a parable,
a narrative for us
normal ass mouth breathing people who just want to make the donuts, Netflix and chill, and they don't want the pressure. They don't want the weight of knowing. Period.
Look, where it gets complicated when they come to North America and South America, and they encounter all these tribes and all the priesthoods of these tribes and all the chieftains of these tribes were fucking 7 foot, 8 foot, 10 foot tall. That's when these white folks realize, okay, we got to squash this, because these motherfuckers are the biblical.
Let me give you a modern day version of this, semi modern day. Zeus was the king of all the gods. Okay? And it was Hitler who took the throne of Zeus from Greece, brought it to Germany, because it's the throne of Lucifer, who was leading the rebellion in heaven. So if he's the one that's in charge of all the angels that's like, throwing down with God, or thought they was, he is also Zeus, who is also the king of the gods.
See, okay, so white folks don't know, like we talk about the story that black folks are taught in our church of how Lucifer got kicked out of heaven. See, you guys, it's called the fall of man for white
because
folks.
Black Masons are teaching that to their congregation.
No, that could be the case, or we could have brought it with us from Africa because it's an old story.
That's possible.
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah, I would see. I'm not talking shit. I'm not going either direction with it. I'm simply saying that white folks call it the fall of man. That they just talk about Lucifer getting kicked out. Black folks, there's a reason he got kicked out, and that's also the reason that me and you. Two things that I want to point out after we tell the story is basically Lucifer was the prettiest, the best looking, the greatest, and he was the best singer. He's part of the choir. He felt the choir should be singing to him, not God. If I'm the best looking, I'm the best. They should be singing to me. So when God finds this out, he's like, nah, this don't work. So Lucifer, when he leaves, he takes a third of the host with him. So that tells you right there. Now, this is something that me and you always talked about. I just saw an article by a white dude said the music industry is run by a death cult. And we have always heard about the music industry, these motherfuckers worshiping the devil. So I'm simply saying is if Lucifer had a relationship with music in heaven, why would he not have a relationship with music on earth? So that's why a lot of this shit, you don't realize what you're singing to or what they're talking about. The song about Rihanna, shine bright like a diamond in the sky, that's Lucifer. She's talking about the morning star. Christ is the bright and morning star. Lucifer is a morning star. Lucifer is knowledge. Christ is truth. That's the shit that you learn when you start studying this other shit. That there are similarities, but they're not the same. And so when you find out that okay, these motherfuckers really do worship death, or these motherfuckers really do drink blood, you freak out. And then this goes back to what my brother's breaking down to you about. There's literally a sect of reptilians that to this day still exists. This bloodline still exists. So of course they have a thirst for blood. Since they look like us and they're intertwined, you're like, man, that dude don't do that. Yes, they do. You see this shit all the time where motherfuckers talk about what was it, Machine Gun Kelly and his girlfriend, they drink each other's blood.
Yep.
Look that shit up. I'm not making.
What did we just talk about earlier? Who is drinking blood? Khan Habal.
Yes. So when you start doing the research, you got to tie shit together. Don't leave your knowledge over here. Don't compartmentalize your knowledge. Excuse me. What I'm saying is what you're learning about over here goes to this over here, goes to that over there. Like, oh shit, I'm staring at one of these evil motherfuckers in their face. Like,
all right. Check this out. One of the heavy hitters we got to talk about is Zoroaster, or Zarathustra. Okay? The origins of Zoroastrianism are not well known, but they're some of the earliest written documents on the subject. The earliest written, some of the earliest stuff people have on it are about the Gathas. They're the records of Zoroaster. But the thing about Zoroaster is that you got to know the history of that religion because it explains a lot. Zoroaster claims that a supernatural being, the supreme deity, which he names Ahura Mazda, the wise Lord, the all-knowing, the all-seeing, revealed his doctrine to him. Who Ahura Mazda is not known. Nobody knows who Ahura Mazda is. But some scholars believe that he was Varuna, the Vedic god of India, of the heavens in the Indian tradition. Now, however, he was also a god among others, whereas Zoroaster made him the creator of the universe. And Zoroaster eliminated Mithra, a great god, in the same Indian tradition associated with Varuna. Zoroaster sees the world as a battleground between two coexistent, conflicting spirits of principles. The true and good creative spirit versus the false and evil or destructive spirit. The yin and yang, essentially. This struggle between good and evil obliged every individual to make a choice between good and evil. For Zoroaster, man's duty and eternal destiny required that he put himself in thought and deeds on the side of good and against evil. The destructive or evil spirit he calls Angra Mainyu, the Druge or the lie, and their followers the separator. Zoroaster was against killing oxen and eating their flesh. This is very similar to what the Hindus feel about cows and being vegetarian.
Yep.
Against the Mithraism ceremony of slaying the cosmic bull. So Zoroaster eschews Mithra. He sees Mithra as evil. But Mithraic cults are popping up again around the world because the former mayor of New York City, Bloomberg, found an ancient Mithraic temple in London and built a skyscraper around it. Yeah.
Look, now in the Middle East, they talk about Gog and Magog. They talk about that crazy shit. And then that's when you find out, like, that whole book that Nebuchadnezzar, that you always see in these movies, that's not a real book, but it's based on 3 other real books. And that shit is some... So you find out about the jinn, which jinn as genie or whatever, they're just fallen ones. So this is another harbinger to the fallen angels or the fallen whatever. And they break that shit down and they talk about different shit. But that's always, whenever you got these white folks who are doing these like mystic rites and shit, they read from those 3 books. It's always some evil shit. And bringing the end of the world, releasing Gog and Magog, and that's just... This shit is alive and well to this day. And that's what my brother's trying to tell you, that there are people who worship these religions that run the world. And, you know, we talked about Hebrewism or Judaism, not Hebrews, but Jews being worshiping with Saturn. You talked about, or do I have it backwards? You said the Islam's was the moon, the Jews were Saturn.
Yep.
And you broke this shit down in past podcasts.
Okay. So let's continue with Iran and their mystery schools, because their mystery schools are dedicated to Zoroaster. Okay. So Zarathustra, the Magi, and Mithra. Zarathustra's influence in Iran was very limited, but his teachings are still important. He was a magus, a magician. It's a person who takes part in the gifts of Maga, and that is the religious teachings of Ahura Mazda. Magu initially meant a Mazda worshiper, and Zarathustra is one of the most important. It was to him the All-Wise revealed his teachings, and after the prophet talked to the god on a burning mountain, not to be confused with the Islamic prophet, different. Zarathustra was a priest and a singer-poet who became a prophet and a reformer. Gradually, the word of Magus came to mean priest, and the Magi were the wise men of the Persian court where they had great influence. The common people had to be present to all sacrifices, respected them. With the extension of the Persian Empire, the Magi were dispersed throughout Asia Minor. Pay attention. Where they came in contact with Chaldeans and with Greek culture. These Hellenized, as in, from Helen, Hellenized Magi must have founded the cult of Mithra as a sun god in Asia Minor. Their priesthood passed from father to son. See? The Magi settled into Asia Minor for many centuries until the 1st century AD. The pirates of Cilicia knew the mysteries of Mithra since the 1st century BC. At that time, people outside the secret groups worshiped Mithra. The transformation of these observances into a regular cult occurred probably in the last 2 centuries BC, under the influence of the Magi. As told in the New Testament, Jesus descended on earth in a human body as the Redeemer and the Messiah at his birth. The Magi
came to see him,
guided by a star, greeted and worshipped him. Certain groups of Jews were interested in Zarathustra and put him on the same level as Ezekiel. The Magi taught the Jewish faith. The Christians knew that Zarathustra was not a Jew, but they recognized him as a prophet who served God by proclaiming that the coming of the Messiah, that is Jesus. In Persian, Avesta, A-V-E-S-T-A, Avesta, he is the Saoshyant who will appear at the end of time when the realm of truth and good will triumph over evil with his help. According to Baman Yasht, a hymn of Avesta, Mithra is the main adversary of these evil powers. There you go. The Magi in the Bible came from Persia, from Asia Minor, to welcome the birth of Jesus. One of those was a black man.
Yeah.
That man had offspring, and one of them became, what's the name of this guy again? Prester John. Became Prester John.
Yep.
So as you can see, there is a plethora of information about these different priesthoods, about these mystery schools, and the foundations of these mystery schools. But for me, the drama is cool and that's fine. But until a person breaks down, what does this do for me? How does this change my life? Because I'm not trying to get a job based on this. I'm not trying to learn secret handshakes based on this.
But that's the whole problem, is that they have us fighting over scraps and money and paying bills that we don't recognize that the keys to the universe are right there in front of you.
Precisely.
Look, how do you eat off this shit is what you're saying.
It's also not even how you eat off this shit.
But hold it. That's why whenever you find some little globules of knowledge, there's always some shyster attached to it, because he or she realized, okay, fuck it, like I got some deep shit here, but I can't do nothing with it, so I gotta parse it out, or I gotta take over these people and control them, so they'll take care of me. And then whenever you find these Jesus wannabes, they always got 16 different wives and they got a bunch of kids and they're fucking everybody, and it's always because what they say, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Once you start giving motherfuckers power, they don't care about the message anymore. They just care about the followers. That's some fucked up shit, but that's how it is.
The way I see it, these people, these cult leaders have more in common with fallen angels than they do with Christ consciousness.
With deity, yes. With enlightenment.
Yep. But so, and this is the thing, like, I'm not even looking at this like, yo, how can I eat off of this? You know, how can I live off of this? How can I gain physical, earthly wealth off of this? I'm not in it for that. I am more interested in getting my Jedi on. You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm more concerned with.
The truth seeker.
So,
just trying to...
as you ascend beyond this earthly plane, there are realms, and they're stacked like a bowl of, like a plate of pancakes or French crepes. And so there's layers and layers and levels to this game. But there's lower level entities that exist in there, lost souls, elementals, people that want power, that are desperate and hella thirsty, will pray to these lower level elementals because they can't see what's on the other side. Really, what it is a spiritual glory hole. And you stick your spirit through the other side and they stroke it. And, you know, you feel good. And now because you got your finger through the electrical socket, you think that you know how electricity is made.
Work, yep. You think you know how it works because that's some deep shit.
But that's the thing. It's like, stick your finger in the light socket. You're going to get punished. You might live, but you're going to get punished. Keep doing it. What's going to happen to you? It's going to wear your nervous system down and kill you.
But you don't, like you said, you don't know where it came from. You still don't have some intimate knowledge of electricity or what produces it. But you know You know what it can do to you. You know the bad side of it, but you don't understand it anymore just because you stuck your finger in that light socket. That's why I said what you said is real deep. These motherfuckers don't know what they fucking with.
Man. So the stuff that we drop on this show, all right. So what I'm basically saying to you is that the things that we drop on the show, we do this because we do it as a service, actually. We enjoy doing this. We enjoy sharing truth with people. And that truth can take the form of speaking about mystery schools, speaking about who these deities really are, fallen angels, speaking about ways you can combat, the darkness and the denizens of darkness that are having influences with your life, drinking this adrenochrome and drinking baby blood and doing all this dirty shit in front of you, and you don't realize it. And then there's people that, just do this willy-nilly and they don't put any thought into it at all. I was doing some work the other day for this black couple that's doing fairly good for themselves, right? They got this nice house, they got a Tesla and a brand new Mercedes, and they got an acre of land in Fulton County. That's like having an acre of land in northern Fulton County. That's like having an acre of land in Regency in 1985. Okay? That's before everybody figured out Regency was singing it to the ground. But they're doing well for themselves. They show up and they come outside wearing masks on their face. Both of them got masks on their face. Now, me and my coworker are standing 8 feet, 10 feet away, and these people got masks on their face. And immediately I'm like, wow, really? Really, black folks, that's who we are? Like, that's what you're doing outdoors? And these are healthy people. Like, they're not immunocompromised looking people. Hold on. So, I'm looking at them like, And the crazy part about it is, once, like, me and my coworkers start, working and, like, really getting it in, because, we throw down. And they see how hard we work, and they take their masks off. So I'm like, oh, okay, so we were just fucking with a condom on. He was like, all right, I trust you. You ain't got nothing. You can take the condom off now.
Yeah, I know you now. You clean up. I got you. It's
so crazy. Like, both of them did it. First the husband, then the wife. I'm like, oh, okay. You just want to make sure, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, all right, motherfuckers.
Yeah, but that tells you it's more about a comfort level than it is about actual health.
There's that, and they're blind believers. They're blind believers in something, you know what I'm saying, that they have no idea about. That's created by a corrupt group of people that has trillion-dollar influence around the planet. And that we make assumptions based off of appearance because we believe in these holidays and these allegories and these stories to be literal when they are not.
Look, you heard your whole life you can't judge a book by its cover. What that means is that you gotta read it. You gotta open it up. This is the same thing with people. But nobody's going to take the time to get to learn or get to know people. You don't have time for that. You don't want to waste time. So that's how the shit is. Look, there's something that when you talked about these people being successful, that I was talking to the person. I explained to her. I said, look, you got to be careful when you fall in love with somebody who raised themselves. She's like, what do you mean? I said, look, there's a lot of people who are successful in spite of themselves, but not because of themselves. And what happens is you got people, bad parents. Things happen, parents die, they're with their uncle or grandparents. I got a cousin, who's raised by his grandparents, but he wanted his parents. And so I said, there are people who are successful in spite of themselves. And those are the ones who carry that trauma with them. Well, this is a prime example. These people are successful financially. They probably just rolled the street. They're successful financially, but may not have been successful because of their own actions. They may have hitched their wagon to education or a job or a career or whatever, and so they're successful, they're making a lot of money, they're doing better than their friends and colleagues and their families, so they think that everything they think is right. So because I got this Tesla, because I live in this nice part of town, all my decisions have been pretty good, I'm right about wearing this mask, which makes no sense, because when you if you're talking about science said that shit is wrong. Science said that a lot of these masks have shit in them because you use them over and over. A lot of science tells you that a virus is the smallest living organism, and it passed right through that mask. So it's just one of these things where when they're right about one thing, they think they're right about everything.
But the crazy part about it was 90 plus degrees outside and humid. I'm like, that shit's not living outside, not
Yeah,
on a hot ass day like this.
if you're worried about COVID. Now, yeah, I've already heard this whole what's the last one? Is it pigpox? What's the last one that's coming up right
Monkeypox.
now? Monkeypox.
It's the butt sex disease.
Well, here's where it gets complicated. That originated in this near this Wuhan facility also. What a coincidence! And y'all can look.
But that brings us back to the motivations behind these things, this
Oh yeah,
biological warfare, and who wants to eliminate these populations, and what are their motivations? These people join fraternities in school, and they became a joiner, okay, and they're willing
it works its way up.
it
Yes,
works
it
their
works its
ways
way up.
up, and like they join one fraternity and it becomes another fraternity, and what happens is the membership gets smaller and smaller and smaller until they're in this group of like a handful of people that are doing some serious dirty deeds, and they
Man,
become sociopathic if they aren't already, and then they're
because
doing
they're
all this
taught they're
dirt.
better than everybody. I'm better than you. But what
I'm
I
the
do is,
elite. I got
yes, I can do this.
I've made it this far, and I've accumulated all this wealth because I
And
did it
knowledge.
on myself, by myself, holding it down, one pillow, no blanket. And the whole thing is about a person who thinks they're doing it by themselves, did it by themselves. When in actuality, this person is actually somebody that's being used as a puppet by our organization that's being controlled by another organization that is horribly, horribly old and ancient and wicked.
Look, that's why I told you earlier. Knowledge is Lucifer. Truth is Christ. You should be searching for truth. And the reason I say that is because knowledge changes. Them same textbooks we used in 19 whatever 83
Yeah.
ain't the same textbooks. That's because knowledge changes as things come to light. Y'all, this means this. Slavery doesn't exist anymore. What the fuck? So
But see, that goes hand in hand with the whole rewriting history thing, and where a person believes they have the power to edit and control the words and the thoughts of people, then that goes all the way back to Nimrod. That goes
look,
all the way back to the Anunnaki. That goes all the way back to the Great Fall. That goes all the way back before that. Why was this Martian civilization destroyed? Was that part of the Great Fall?
so why are there pyramids on Mars? Is there a Sphinx on Mars? All that shit. Look, just give me the information, give me the truth, and I decide how I feel about it. But the fact of the matter is, they don't want you going around being a DD yourself. They don't want you being enlightened. They don't want you ascending. And so, because if you ascend, then you have no need for them, and then this whole thing falls apart. If you're dependent on yourself, that's something we talked about in the last podcast, where this African woman said, "Do you know why we never got involved? Or do you know why? Because if you don't depend on the government, this depression doesn't exist. This depression only affects people who depend on the government. Well, if you don't depend on the government, if you don't depend on outside people, you raise your own food, you make your own fuel. How about that? Diesel was designed to be made by people on farms and didn't need gasoline. So if you're completely independent of these other people, then all of a sudden they have no power. This is all about power. This is all about giving a little bit of knowledge to a couple people so they feel special, and then they do very dastardly things with that power, disgusting things. And we read about the shit, and we just, oh no, that guy didn't do that. He didn't rape that woman. She didn't beat him, or she didn't kill her kids. So some of these people got that reptilian blood in them and don't realize it.
In this episode, we have listed many books you can go and read to learn about the mysteries of these ancient empires and learn about ways to enhance your spiritual life and accelerate your spiritual evolution. Now, the way you use that knowledge is upon you. That onus is on you. Become a Jedi, become a Sith, or just read it for your own and be interested. That's fine. But we put it out there for you to find this stuff and use it because we did the work. We went out and dug this stuff up and experienced it and vetted it and found out what's real and what isn't. All right, so go ahead, experience it for yourself. Dip your foot in the pool and see what you can see about yourself and learn some new shit and find out what the big mystery is about. Why is it so mysterious? You actually come to find that it's not a mystery at all. So
Nope, it's staring you in your face.
that's right. So look, that's all I got. We out. Peace.
Hey, holla back.